And from here again, the Midwest Doctor, another article, we have a report of a years-long research that he joined with Dr. Pierre Corey on jab shedding, of which I'm only going to read the summary. They did a ton of work, so it's something that you need. I mean, I think you need to go through. I think I'll just touch it for you. I'll just let you know it's available. You can get the link with the titled here, What We've Learned from a Year of Vaccine Shedding Data. Numerous data sources now corroborate that the COVID vaccine shed is a consistent and replicable manner. Story at a glance. And this is really all I'm going to read just to introduce you to this. After the COVID-19 vaccines hit the market, stories began emerging of unvaccinated individuals becoming ill after being in proximity to recently vaccinated individuals. This confused many, as the mRNA technology in theory should not be able to shed. After seeing countless patient cases which can only be explained by COVID vaccine shedding a year ago, I initiated multiple widely seen calls for individuals to share suspected shedding experiences. From those 1,500 reports, a clear and replicable patterns have emerged which collectively prove shedding, is in quotes, just calling it shedding, is a real and predictable phenomenon that can be explained by known mechanisms unique to mRNA technology. Likewise, after being blocked by publication for over a year, recently a scientific study corroborating the shedding phenomena was finally published. This article will map out everything that is known about shedding. For example, what are the common symptoms? How does it happen? Who does it affect? Does it occur through sexual contact? Can it cause severe issues like cancer, along with strategies for preventing it? Now, you've heard me talk about that shedding potential way early on, and it was indicated by the reports of some of the testing. So I've been keen to keep watching on this, and I'll let you get this link and research it, make it important to you. This is really a big threat. I wondered about it. Now they're finding that it is a problem. Now you have to assess how much of a threat and what you might want to be able to do. But I sent an X-Twitter to Dr. Corey, who did a post about this. That's how I found out about it. And I wrote him, I've been talking about shedding early on. I've likened the exposure reaction to stories I've heard of beekeepers' wives in close proximity to bee suits, though they never were stung. And I thank you both for all the follow-up work. And I'll tell my listeners, Operation Hindsight 2020. That'll be the tag you can get through the X-Twitter of all the things I've put. You'll find lots of other things for Hindsight 2020, but you'll find my stuff there with that tag all the way back for all these things. And what I suggested there, which I didn't say in the X-Post reply, was that method of transmission. And I likened it to those bees, to the venom, which I identified from the various jab symptoms to be actually from a poisonous caterpillar from South America, if you remember that broadcast. Again, all the symptoms in that one story I told you about the girl that stepped on a nest of those caterpillars, and she had all the symptoms that anybody who ever got a jab got, all in 4 or 5 days, I think it was, before she died. But I can't do this article justice than to provide the link so that you can give it the comprehensive study your full consideration and attention here to consider these things for yourself. And maybe as I reverse engineered the CDC suggestions to the jab, that it was a good idea for us unjabbed to keep at least 6 feet away from the jab people was a good start. They were actually telling us what we needed to do by telling the people that were jabbed what they should be keeping us away. Because they weren't going to agree that they were the problem. As I told you, the jab was the infectious agent. And so we're the first studies. I appreciated all the work they did. A year's worth of time, folks. So someone's put in with medical experience here, too, as well. North Carolina justices decide family can sue over unwanted COVID-19 shots. Now, I guess I need to say it. The Midwestern doctor uses the term COVID-19 vaccines. I suppose that's just the way there are doctors that they'll talk that way, but you know that I don't say that they're vaccines. They were, as a matter of law, they're bioweapons. As a matter of law, they weren't to be used as a treatment relative to what we read in the local communicable disease law. So that said, people who did get jabbed, those that are unjabbed, can apparently be affected. And I didn't go through to find out the real mechanism they've come up with, but I haven't heard a good answer besides something like the exposure that you get through venoms that are literally in the air. They're just aerosol. And they're proteins. Those venoms are just proteins. So North Carolina justices have decided that the families can sue of unwanted COVID-19 shots. The North Carolina mother and son can sue a public school system and doctors group on allegations that they gave the boy a COVID-19 vaccine without consent. The state Supreme Court ruled on Friday, reversing a lower court decision that declared a federal health emergency law blocked the litigation. A trial judge, and later the State Court of Appeals, had ruled against Emily Happel and her son Tanner Smith, who at age 14 received the vaccinations in August 2021. Despite his protests at a testing and vaccination clinic at Guilford County High School, according to the family's lawsuit, Smith went to the clinic to be tested for COVID-19 after a cluster of cases occurred among his school's football team. He did not expect the clinic would be providing vaccines as well, according to the litigation. Smith told workers he didn't want a vaccination and he lacked a signed parental consent form to get one. When the clinic was unable to reach his mother, a worker instructed another to give it to him anyway, Happel and Smith alleged in their legal briefs. Does that sound like the AI and gaggle? Well, we couldn't get a hold of anybody, so we just decided the cops will be here any minute. Happel and Smith sued the Guilford County Board of Education and an organization of physicians who helped to operate the school clinic, alleging claims of battery and that their constitutional rights were violated. The panel of the Intermediate Level Appeals Court last year ruled unanimously that the Federal Public Readiness and Emergency Preparedness Act shielded the school district and the Old North State Medical Society from liability. The law places broad protections and immunity on an array of individuals and organizations who perform countermeasures during a public health emergency. The COVID-19 Emergency Declaration of March 2020 activated the law's immunity provision, Friday's decision said. Think about this and the fraud that I was talking about at that time. This is how they did it. No one challenged it. Now it's presumptive correct that the state did what it was supposed to do. But here, Chief Justice Paul Newby, writing on Friday's prevailing opinion, said that the federal law did not prevent the mother and son from suing on allegations that the rights of state constitution have been violated. In particular, he wrote, there is a right for a parent to control their child's upbringing and the right of a competent person to refuse forced non-mandatory medical treatment. Can I interject? It says that's what the communicable disease law provides for. If you just go down the list and do it that way, this would have never happened. The article goes on to explain the federal law's plain text led a majority of justices to conclude that the immunity only covers tort injuries, Newby wrote, which is when someone seeks damages for injuries caused by negligent or wrongful actions. Quote, because tort injuries are not constitutional violations, the PrEP Act does not bar plaintiffs' constitutional claims, he added, while sending the case back presumably for a trial on the allegations. Associate Justice Allison Riggs, writing a dissenting opinion backed by the other Democratic justice on the court, said that the state constitutional claims should be preempted from federal law. Riggs criticized the majority for fundamentally unsound constitutional analysis. Quote, through a series of dizzying inversions, it explicitly rewrites an unambiguous statute to exclude state constitutional claims from the broad and inclusive immunities, Riggs said. So we'll have to wait and see how this plays out a little bit. It did go to the state Supreme Court, but if there's going to go to the federal Supreme Court, I'm not sure. But here you see how they reanalyze this to say, well, this was not a tort violation. This is not a tort claim. This is a constitutional claim, and you have your constitutional rights. And then we have this idea, we hope, that the constitutional rights cannot be subverted by this essentially executive administrative function. And I hear nothing here that says that they even push that, right? So this is my main problem with all this is that there's no immunity when the government did not non-fraudulently demonstrate that infectious agent in this son or in the mother or anybody. And that's why the clinic didn't have the right to give them anything. They weren't the doctor. They weren't shown to be someone suspect. And if you go back through the local communicable disease law, you'll see the list of steps that has to be done before someone has to even make a decision, as you heard me explain over and over, so I won't continue to do that. But y'all won't have to wait for any future COVID care in Arkansas. Ivermectin becomes accessible without prescription in Arkansas under new state legislation. Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders has officially signed the Senate Bill 189 into law. Interesting number there, too. Very good. Granting approval for the sale and purchase of ivermectin for human use, human use without a prescription. The new legislation signed into law on Tuesday allows ivermectin suitable for human consumption to be sold over the counter in Arkansas, making it accessible to individuals without the need for a prescription or consultation with a healthcare professional. And this is probably the biggest deal. A lot of people who can't afford to go to a doctor or regular at all need to be able to access some of this medicine, so-called, whatever they want to call this stuff, without this overburden, $200 a visit or whatever it is that you don't have. But here we have Arkansas is going ahead and going to make ivermectin over the counter. Legislation explicitly states that ivermectin suitable for human use may be sold or purchased as an over-the-counter medication in this state without prescription or consultation with a healthcare professional. This development marks a notable shift in the state's stance on the drug, which has traditionally been available only through a doctor's prescription. Very, very interesting. It's very important for those of you that have been studying this ivermectin. I find this drug, this chemical, just fascinating on what it does, as well as I was reading on benzidol. It's similar. It has a very similar type of thing. Very interesting what's going on with this. It's hard to say it's not a miracle type of thing. And then we also know that it's relatively safe. It's not something you disregard. It is a drug, but fascinating. It's a fascinating compound at all. But if these were in place during the Great COVID swindle, the jabs could not have been authorized for use, being that there would have been a viable treatment. So never forget that the CDC and the FDA, what they did to help foist the military attack on we the people, which Trump started. Never forget the real ID of who the domestic terrorists are. That's right. Go back and apply the definitions of domestic terrorism to that. Won't you, please? Cat turd. Don't guess. Don't throw it out there. It's all black and white. Just start applying the black and white. Don't even have to question it. Go look at that definition. 18 U.S.C. 2331. Apply domestic terrorism, the statutes. Look at what the government military did, what Trump started, what the whole of every state government did, never fulfilling the law, what it did to people, and how it disrupted the economy and the population and killed people. And don't argue to me that the domestic terrorism wasn't caused by the government itself. Where's the accountability that John Whitehead is asking for? What I've asked for, what my listeners that I've communicated with asked for.